Good evening, everyone. I'm Jing Kuang, MBA 16, chapter leader of the GSBAA Alumni chapter and founding partner of Y Plus Ventures, a VC fund investing in early-stage AI startup in Silicon Valley. Welcome to our Thought Leader series tonight, co-hosted by GSBAA and the Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs, featuring the three incredible AI experts, Dr. Lamia Youseff, Fady Saad, and also Spisak. Welcome. Before we start our events today, let me share a little bit about GSBAA. So, as the official alumni chapter at Stanford, our vision is to connect, collaborate, and catalyze change in the global venture ecosystem. Our mission is to foster an enriching environment where alumni can leverage your shared Stanford heritage to advance the VC ambition and pass down the industry wisdom to the next generation with a culture of giving back. So our chapter activities include thought leader series like today, and set up startup pitch events and on-campus and off-campus social mixers. Our past thought leader series, we are very honored to host some academias, Professor Ilya Stratlev, interim dean of GSB, Peter DiMasso, Professor Zhi Guohe, and Professor Zhong Bai from Tsinghua, the dean of Tsinghua University. And we also had the privilege to host some legendary venture capitalists, Claudia von Mans from NDA, Heidi Rosen from Threshold Ventures, Clint Cover from ULU, and also Jeff Young from Redpoint Ventures. So if you are interested in volunteering and building up the chapter together, please find me after the event. And for our audience and how to stay in the loop, you can scan the QR code to join our WhatsApp group, LinkedIn, and Stanford Alumni group. Okay, so tonight we will first hear from keynotes from our speakers. After their remarks, we'll dive into a fireside chat with all of them. Now, it's my honor to introduce our speakers. First, Dr. Lamia Youseff is a pioneering AI executive and investor with over 25 years of experience across BigTech and academia. Currently CEO of jazzcomputing.com and a keynote speaker on AI. She advises investors on AI strategy and tech BD, and sits on Stanford GSBAA Board of Directors. As a founding engineer of Google Cloud and a leader in transformative AI initiative at Apple, Microsoft, and Meta, her insights on scaling enterprise AI and digital transformation are invaluable. Welcome, Lamia.
Thank you very much. Hello everyone and good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yes. Good. Thank you for braving the storm today and coming and joining us. It's such a privilege and honor to be here with all of you. Thank you. And I have a few notes, very quick notes on the AI ecosystem. I've been doing that for almost 25 years and I'm going to tell you why. But before going that, can you believe that it has been 24 months since the launch of ChatGPT that have changed everything, right? Time flies. I'm going to start with actually a personal story. So about 25 years ago, I was studying my intro class in deep learning and machine learning at the American University in Cairo, where my mom came from a doctor visit suspecting that she has breast cancer. And of course, as a family, that was a very difficult time. We processed it, like basically she had to go through the biopsy and all of the process. It was a very difficult time. Yet, in school, we were taking deep learning and learning about how can we use machine learning in order to be able to build models that can use X-rays to predict benign versus malignant skin cancer in minutes. And that just like opened my eyes, like, can we do that with AI? Can we save lives? Luckily, my mom's cancer was benign. She's safe and she's healthy and she's with us and have been doing an amazing job teaching at the university level. But that story stayed with us. Can we use AI to be able to save lives and to be able to improve our human experience? And that's where it started. But from there, went to different companies, went to different universities in order to learn about how do we scale AI and take it to the next level. And contributed to different projects. One of the challenges that quickly was apparent is how do we create the computational resources in order to be able to bring the AI capability to scale. And that's when I joined Google Cloud in the very early days, and Microsoft, and Facebook, and Apple recently. And today, we build just computing, where we work with investors in order to be able to increase this impact across the industry. Having said that, it's very important to also look at the story of AI. AI is not a new concept. Actually, AI as a term got coined in 1957 during the workshop that was held in the East Coast. And just to put things in perspective, Bill Gates was born in 1955. The moon landing didn't happen until 1969. Microsoft wasn't founded until 1975. So AI was even longer than that, older than that. It's not a new concept, as as many of us have get to see. However, it went through a number of basically ups and downs, summers and winters. We find a new idea, we're excited about the idea, and then we kind of realize that we are running into a bottleneck, and then we stopped investing into the idea. However, most recently, around the 1990s, there was an idea around deep learning or machine learning, specifically how can we build machines that think like the human brain, and instead of us teaching the machine the knowledge that we're gathering, let the machine learn machine learning. Let the machine learn from the data. Didn't take off, given we didn't have computational resources, didn't take off, given that we didn't have the data to train it at scale. And then around the early 2000s, then when we started having cloud computing, when we started to have big data era, and all of that have just ignited the field from there to the launch of ChatGPT in November of 2022. And that have been the most exciting 24 months since then to everybody in the field, basically looking at how can we take scale of AI, especially that it became a conversation with everyone around the table, realizing the power of AI that we have been working on in BigTech and across the world, and especially in the research labs and that. Having said that, last 24 months, the post-ChatGPT, we have seen a lot of investment. We have seen the craziness around GPUs. We have seen large language models and small language models, open source and closed source. We have seen robotics being able to have demoed on stage at Tesla and at NVIDIA. We have seen a huge amount of investment going into startup, but also going into the research lab, huge investment in natural language processing and in the application of AI at the enterprise level. I will not go in details here because of our limited time, but in my last 24 months, I've talked to perhaps 500, 600 investors, and there was always the same dilemma coming back, the same question coming back. AI startups are at a significantly higher valuations. As a result, every investment that they are making means that they have to do less investment from a portfolio point of view, leading to every fund is invested into a smaller number of startups, and therefore higher risk per fund. Yet at the same time, we cannot just sit outside and watch because of the significant opportunity that we might lose if we're not invested in the upcoming Google or Facebook or what have you, right? So basically, like the trade-off, do we invest or do we wait? And one way that I went about to answer this question is to go to the specifics of fundamentals of what we learned here. I personally learned here in that classroom, and it was about the value chain. And I asked the question, can we build a value chain for the AI industry where we can characterize what's happening across the different layers and where we can basically try to understand where margins are created and captured, and what basically the concentration of different industries versus what's happening between different players in the market. And this is after several conversations with several investors and several players in the market. This is what basically we came to, which is different layers, and each of them is building. One would argue that likely most of the margins is going to be captured at the very bottom and the very bottom and very top, and that's because everybody in the middle is going to be more or less squeezed out of their margins by pressure of what's below them and what's above them. But that's the question that I want to pose to you today, whether you agree with this or not. What we have seen so far is there's a lot of capture of value happening at the semiconductor and the hardware layers, specifically GPUs. And one might argue that this is a function of NVIDIA creating a bottleneck in this environment through a concentrated provider and distributed, concentrated supplier, distributed basically deployment. So one might argue this. We don't see the same in models, for example, so open source fraction. And then we don't know yet about the data, knowing that most of the enterprise data is still private, is still an ownership of the enterprise. The biggest question here, the multi-million or multi-billion dollar question, is what's happening in the apps layer. Specifically verticalized layers, and specifically the consumer app, or the next Google, if I may say. So try to ask what will happen in the next 24 months. And it's always a sure way to be wrong is to try to predict the future, right? So forgive me if I get it wrong, but these are the 5 technologies that I'm super excited about in order of their potential. One of them is the enterprise AI. I expect that we're going to see a tsunami of AI migration for enterprise technologies that's going to be looking to integrate AI into their different ecosystems and their different products and their different basically revenue streams. This is what most of the big tech have been preparing for quite significantly by building bigger and bigger data centers and by building more and more products for the enterprise AI. This is basically very high potential, all the way to action AI, agentic software, and going all the way to spatial AI that's still starting, not sure what they can achieve in the next 24 months. And not missing, of course, robotics and humanoids and causal AI. Happy to cover more during our chat. But my AI story is not only my story, it's all of our stories. So Hungary, the country, were able to adapt AI into their different systems, especially for mammograms, for breast cancer, over the last 2 years. And by integrating this through the mammograms, they were able to detect at least 22 earlier cases of breast cancers that would have been missed by the regular radiologist review because they were very early. And that translated into better medicine, better treatment, saving of lives for at least 22 women. But if you take this and you scale it to other types of cancer, if you take this and scale it to other human experiences in the medical field and other fields, actually that can be significant. These 22 women can be my mom, your sister, your wife. This can be significant. So in this sense, I want to leave you with one message, which is, although it's very exciting what's happening in the AI field, it's very exciting, the new cool apps, the new like models and what have you, let's not forget that we want AI to help us improve our human experience collectively and individually and save lives. And that's what we're going to call the success of AI. It's our story, it's not my story. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lamia. Okay, so our next speaker is Joe Spisak. He serves as the Director of Product Management for Generative AI at Meta. With a decade of experience in AI, he has led product teams at Meta, Google, and Amazon, driving innovations like PyTorch, now the leading open source AI development framework. Joe is also an angel investor and advisor to companies like Anthropic, Last Mile AI, and Evolutionary Scale. Joe's expertise in AI tools and the developer ecosystem is transformative. Welcome, Joe.
Well, thank you. Let me turn my speaker on. Can anyone hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for inviting me. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you for the intro. You're too kind. You can see the slides up there, but I see them up here. Yeah, my story is definitely not as long as as distinguished as Lamia. Her and I obviously intersected at Facebook back when we were both in the infra org. We've had really interesting journeys, and we've stayed in touch along the way. I think it's been awesome, and I always learn something every time I connect with her, reconnect with her, we reconnect. So yeah, as mentioned, I worked on a lot of open source. I've worked in built foundations. I do a lot of work with a lot of VCs. I know I'm surrounded by VCs, so nice to see you. My AI journey actually started, and probably it's kind of evident by my career, is it started in open source. It started doing research, and I was actually at the other university down the road. Sorry, I work with both schools, promise. And we just sold a startup actually to Facebook, video startup, and I was like basically kind of aimless. I was like, what do I do now? I spent a bunch of my career in the semiconductor space as doing things like VLSI design and building chips and building systems that go into video products, and I was building basically GPU accelerated video transcoding that was multi-platform, which sounds really cool like 10 years ago or 12 years ago. Now it's like, who cares? But it's fun. And I was like, this ML thing is kind of interesting. I got invited to a Berkeley retreat in Tahoe. I was like, why not go to Tahoe and have some fun? And I met some of my lifelong friends there just on that retreat alone. And so if anybody remembers the old cafe project, the OG, right? There you go. Okay, so that was like the first project I worked on, which was ages, right? So Yanqing is a close friend, and it was his PhD project, and unbeknownst to me, it was actually the project that was powering AI at companies like Facebook and Google and Yahoo, and it was basically a PhD student's work. And I remember walking into the first meeting room. We were kind of in these breakouts, and I was like in total learning mode. I didn't know what the hell was going on because I was a chip guy. I was a double E, right? And I walk in, but I was like surrounded by people from all these other companies. They were just collaborating, and it was like, CI's down, or builds are broken. Like, oh, I'll jump in, I'll fix that, right? And I was like used to this being in this world of semiconductor where it was like everything patented and like compression, patent pools and MPEG, and it was just like it was crazy, and just like this open culture where people were publishing together, even though they were on competitive or they were competitive companies. So that just drew me right in, and I was like, I went all the way down the rabbit hole from there. I was coding at night. I was taking classes. I took Ed Ray's class more than 10 years ago here at ML class here at Stanford. We're having kids at the same time, and at night I was building neural nets, doing distributed training, all that kind of stuff. So I found it just so engaging, and there was so much energy from this community that it just drew me in. And so I've been in it ever since. And I've been trying to help companies and help developers and building tools, and that's where kind of drew me to PyTorch, which is actually the framework that trained actually ChatGPT, for example, and is used at scale at Meta today, and a lot of other places. So I'll go through a few. By the way, just for the record, I'm not a slide person, so forgive me, my slides are really bad. For those that know me, I write much better narratives. It was feed into me when I was at Amazon that I had to write really great narratives. So it's my slide stuff. But this is a very pretty slide. I didn't design it. So I kind of entered the space a little after 2010, kind of 2012, 2013, just right around ImageNet or just before ImageNet, which was this moment in time when we figured out that computer vision could actually eclipse the human capabilities. And so our your own Andre Karpathy here at Stanford was the guy who was that human that the AI eclipsed, right? He literally sat there and looked at every single example in a training set of millions of images and said, that's a whatever kind of bird, right? And and they found that the the ConvNet, the convolutional neural net, actually could eclipse what he was capable of, which was kind of this moment that, at least in the AI space, in like this small niche world that we were in at the time, like that was a big moment. It woke us up, right? It's not like the ChatGPT moment. We kind of thought it was, but we were, of course, wrong, for lack of a better word. And then we've also like seen this transition. So, when I got into the space, we were talking about top 1, top 5 accuracy in ConvNets, precision, recall. Like we have like relatively good ways to like measure how well these models perform. Like life was good, right? I can just push those metrics, or I can find the efficient frontier of precision recall, and I have a model I can deploy. Life is relatively good. Now this generative AI thing comes along, which of course isn't really that new, but we're using it to generate things, and there's really no ground truth. Really, it's very subjective, and I think that's what's really interesting about the Gen AI space. Is I'll get into some of like the trends of why that's interesting in a minute, but there is no real ground truth to kind of hang our head on, right? I can't say that there's a dog in there or it's more like, hey, I've generated this image. Like, is that the image that I wanted to generate? Well, if I ask someone in this room and then someone else in this room, they'll probably give me 2 different answers. And so it's a really interesting thing, and we're still trying to get to grips with how to actually evaluate the success of these models. So just kind of jumping into some of the trends, and this again is my own biased point of view. I tend to like spend a lot of time with researchers and developers and people building systems, and I tend to be less on kind of the consumer side, so much more deep tech. So, this is obviously near and dear to my heart. One of the things we found is open source is absolutely killing it right now. I'm the former head of product for Llama. I'm proud of the models we released in open source. It's been a game changer for startups. It's been a game changer for universities. It's been a game changer for having control of the weights and being able to build systems that you can deploy locally, private agents, financial vertical, like any company that values data and values privacy and wants to have something running local or on their own infra, or even just developers getting started. Lamia mentioned small models. We just something I championed at Meta is building these small models for a number of reasons, and the growth has been incredible in open source. Number 2, agents. So all we talk about right now are agents. Like that's all we talk about. Agents everywhere. Agents. So many agentic startups. There's probably dozens of agentic frameworks. People building these things. What does it actually mean? You can kind of think of this as almost like a continuum of control that we're letting go, essentially, and less and less agency we ourselves have. So if you kind of like look back, maybe in the last year and a half, we started out with these like assistants, and like that was there was a chat assistant, right? And it basically would just answer a question. So you ask it a question, it would give you the answer. It was it wouldn't really take any actions, but it just kind of give you information. Then we started to move into these co-pilots, where you had this prompt a model and had kind of these pre-programmed actions that it would take. So there's something called tool use. Anyone know what tool use is? Or like function calls? Okay, I see a couple of that. Okay, so the cool kids, they call it tool use, right? It's a research term. It's a very kind of weird term that we use for something like a plugin. So I say like tool use. I want to train my model. I want to fine tune my model to be able to call Google search. So it'll actually use like natural language understanding in your prompt, and it'll say, okay, well, shoot, I don't know the answer to this, or maybe the best thing for me to do is actually do a search and then attribute those search results back to the response that it gets. And that's really what we call co-pilots. Then you get into agents that can actually take action for you. And so in this case, like you actually you have open-ended actions that it can take. It could be like this multi-turn thing where I converse back and forth with the agent. Buy something, buy my wife a spa package because I did something wrong. I stayed too late at Stanford tonight, and she had to pick my daughter up. Common use case in the Spisak household, unfortunately. But then you get into like the real stuff here, like the specialized and aware agents. This is where you start to see like agents talking to agents. Like you might have an agent sounds very formal, but it could be as simple as like looking at my calendar, looking at what I have booked tonight. Am I at Stanford? Am I, just working late? I have meetings, whatever it is, go have dinner. And having agents basically be able to converse, and instead of APIs, they're actually conversing in natural language. And they're parsing each other, and they're taking action, and they're coming back, and they're saying, okay, great, I booked your dinner, whatever. So the other thing I kind of alluded to is like the evaluation world, and this is I think where like VC should like perk up their ears because this is a super unsolved problem. In fact, I think the two universities I would say, probably three universities I think that are kind of doing really interesting things here that I work with personally. One obviously here at Stanford is the Helm, is a holistic benchmark that you all have here. I think Chatbot Arena out of UC Berkeley, Jan Stoika's lab out there, it's called kind of under the LMSys umbrella, is also very, very interesting. They also released something called Red Team Arena. If you're using a work laptop, do not access Red Team Arena, I promise you. But it's a lot of fun, it's quite addicting. It gives you 1 minute to basically jailbreak a model. It tells you what to get the model to say, and whoever gets the model to be able to say those things, goes with the leaderboard, and it kind of gamifies things. So it gamifies essentially jailbreaking. And then Livebench, which is kind of out of NYU and a few other places, and Jan LeCun is on, you can see on paper, is really more of a ever-evolving, kind of evergreen benchmark. But fundamentally, how we evaluate these models and these systems today is broken. We use static benchmarks. They're basically prompt pairs. If you ever heard the term NLU, if you know, okay. Basically, we use a lot of academic benchmarks that say, here's a prompt, here's a response, did it get it right? And these are very easy to kind of over time saturate. And so what the space is moving towards is much more dynamic, essentially how you and I would interact, right? Which is very kind of interesting. So we're moving to very almost more like human-like evals. But this is a big place for innovation, big place for us to disrupt and really understand how well these models do perform. Because right now, we don't really have great tools to do it. Does anybody remember the strawberry announcement from OpenAI? Okay, cool. So Noam Brown, the lead on that, great friend of mine. We worked together on a project called Diplomacy. We worked together on a project we worked on poker, there's mathematics and theorem proving. So what's really interesting is, so one of the things that we talk about why BigTech has an advantage, and of course we do because we have a lot of money, we have a lot of compute, and we're able to buy Jensen's GPUs. So we do this thing called pre-training, and which means you basically build a model and you build kind of the knowledge base of these systems. And then we start to talk about, okay, what happens after that base model? Then we move into something called post-training, which we do things like supervised fine-tuning, which means I have label data, but then I do some things like reinforcement learning with human feedback, which is another way of basically aligning the model and the system to kind of do what I want it to do. Be a chatbot, be a conversational interface, be an agent. You kind of are able to kind of steer the model in that phase. What we've actually seen over the years, which is now kind of hitting mainstream Gen AI, is this ability to kind of do inference time compute. Basically put more compute towards the time when you actually prompt or engage with the system. And what's actually happening here is actually nothing very new. It's something called, like, say, Monte Carlo research. So it's actually doing search on there. And what this does is actually pushes more of the compute instead of like kind of pushing it all into kind of the pre-training phase, which we all expect to kind of 10x and 10x and 10x. And you can only build so many GPUs and train out so much data. And so you do like search and planning kind of at this inference time or interaction time. It's actually shown to improve the performance of these systems significantly, and that's what Strawberry and OpenAI has now released, at least initially. So expect a lot of innovation in this space. I'm not sure if I have audio or not, but like hierarchical systems are really interesting. Let's see. So this was a project that I worked on. So again, a champion of small models. So we obviously at Meta we have hardware, we have headsets, we have request headsets. We've actually shown the prototypes for Orion. Did anyone see those? Connect. So these are basically glasses that have augmented reality. They look like basically Ray-Ban glasses, right? They have, there's actually like first principles, like new materials that we've developed at the company to build these things, whether it's the optics or whether it's the frames themselves. But you can imagine running AI like locally, right? And having this kind of hierarchical, and I'm not sure if I want to play that again, but like you can kind of see, in this case, like there are models that we actually released into open source running locally on those headsets. And they're actually doing, there's an agent, if you actually put the headset on, there's an agent that will float around and kind of follow you. And you can interact with it in different languages. It can actually do things like, understand your world and understanding events in your world and what you've done, what you've seen, who you're talking to, what you've said, all that kind of good stuff. And a lot of this is actually running locally, and then it will actually run, if it needs like a complex query or needs other information, it can actually query the cloud or a bigger model. So these hierarchical systems, I think, are going to be quite interesting because what that does is it allows you to, number one, be much more private because you're not shipping a lot of data off the device. Number two, latency, like you can have kind of these dynamic interactions, and then thirdly, you can actually personalize. So it's really, really interesting to see kind of how models are going to just live in these different places and actually be much more, I would say, like ambient is probably the word I'm thinking. Yes, we've seen the video. Okay, here's my deep tech roots coming out now. So who can write a CUDA kernel in this room? Right, we have Jensen, I was sponsoring. Okay, so I think we're seeing a big comeback right now in actual like kernel development and like performance improvements. And like there's like this really interesting community that's we've started to cultivate, and we work, for example, like closely with OpenAI on this project called Triton, which we kind of co-developed, and we had a conference last month or month and a half or so ago. We also have cultivated this community called GPU Mode, and we hosted our first in real life event at Excel Ventures, probably now, was that about maybe almost 2 months ago? And then of course we're invading our side because performance is so key. When you do, like hundreds of trillions of predictions with these models that are very expensive to run on these heavy GPUs that cost you, billions of dollars, like every little 0.1% of improvement or efficiency actually matters. And so we're seeing this really interesting, dynamic where, like, performance was kind of cool for a while and kind of went out of vogue, and we like optimized these models to within the inch of their life. And now Gen AI has like cultivated this new community of folks, and we're even looking at ways to use LLMs to even generate CUDA kernels and see if they can actually beat human hand-coded kernels. And the faster those kernels or the better those kernels are, and when I say kernel here, it means like something that's like a matrix multiplication or matrix vector multiplication, which is at the end of the day like the heart of all of this anyway. It's all linear algebra. Lastly, the stack. So Lamia has her stack, I have mine. Mine's a little more complex, mine's a little more esoteric, a little deeper. I like mine. I don't know. I think it's kind of cool. So this whole world starts with data, obviously, and so whether that's the pre-training data, whether it's preference data, whether it's like data in the post-training, hardware. I think we're still looking for ways to be more diverse in the hardware that we use. Obviously, we use a ton of NVIDIA, we use a ton of AMD now. We're actually, like I said, running on edge devices, on headsets, on glasses, on phones. The models themselves, there's some really interesting things happening here. If you are familiar with like the Apple Intelligence, the way they've architected that is actually really cool. There's a small model that sits on your phone, and then what they have is these little adapters that are kind of fine-tuned for different tasks. They're orchestrated dynamically based on how you use your phone. Super cool. It's based on something called low-rank adaptation. You can look that up if you want, if you're curious. But that kind of sits at that model layer. Then, of course, we have a tool chain and how you actually develop these models, and that's like PyTorch and tools like that. And then you have this innovation, like a year and a half ago, no one knew what LangChain was. When I showed up and said, hey, we tried LangChain. Has anyone tried LangChain here? Okay, cool. So there you go, a few more hands. So Harrison, he did something really cool. He built this really cool project, Harrison Chase, and it actually brought kind of agents to the forefront. And then, we started to see like apps like Devin and, all these things start to innovate on top of that. But in between all of that, there is all this minutia of, pre-training, and evaluation, fine-tuning, and synthetic data generation, and quantization, and batch, and real-time inference. And even that actually has a bunch of things that, that you can extrapolate from. So this stack is super complex. It's really interesting, and where there's complexity, actually, in my opinion, there's a lot of opportunity. And that's where I'd be looking if I were investing. So, I will stop there, and I look forward to chatting more in our panel.
Thank you, Joe. So we'll have a last but not least speaker. Fady Saad is the founder and general partner of Cybernetics Ventures, focusing on robotics, automation, and industrial AI. As a co-founder of Mass Robotics, Fady has led efforts to support startups globally and has deep knowledge of scaling robotics and AI ventures. Welcome, Fady.
Thank you. How's everyone doing? I'm a little bit of a disadvantage now. I mean, this is a heavy load of kind of AI stuff. So I'll try to make this quick and light, and then we kind of switch gears to the panel. So my name is Fady Saad. I'm founder and GP at Cybernetics Ventures. We are an early stage VC fund out of Boston. We created the fund because there has been a gap in early stage investment for robotics companies. So we do believe that robotics is a whole investment class in itself. It's not SaaS, and it's not biotech or deep tech. It's somewhere in between, and it's a different beast. How you build a company, how you form the team, how you think about the product, how you think about the go-to-market, the revenue models. Everything is a little bit different, even the revenue profile. So we said it's not fair for robotics companies to kind of be squeezed between those two big camps of investors. We will create a different kind of VC fund from the get-go, designed to make this kind of investment. And this was the birth of Cybernetics Ventures. I'm originally a mechanical engineer, so unlike Lamia and Joe, I'm a little bit on the kind of machine and mechanical side of things. Started my career working for large corporates. I started working for Siemens and then for Nokia. I did this for 8 years, and I was not very happy. And I decided to quit. This is not where my heart was. And my heart was at small companies, and I got very much obsessed with the idea of why every time we need to build a company, we need to kind of do it by trial and error and kind of more of an art than a systematic way. And I came from this perspective that we can systematize the way we build and scale companies. I'm sure that some of you wouldn't agree with that, but this was and still my obsession. So long story short, I found myself quitting my job, leaving my country. I'm originally from Egypt, and I flew all the way for the first time in my life to the US back in 2011. To this small university in Cambridge, Mass, MIT, and we did a program called Systems Design and Management. And it was a joint program between Sloan School of Management and the School of Engineering, which was a perfect fit for me. I studied stuff like system dynamics and systems modeling, and I mixed that with venture building and management. And finished this program, started companies while I'm there, because like you here in Stanford, this is also what we do there. We build companies, we break things. And then I got heavily involved into robotics. I found myself in robotics. I joined a small company, medium-sized company in Cambridge called Vecna Robotics. The company was doing multi-million-dollar government grants with DARPA, the Air Force, the Navy, and they had a massive portfolio of IP, but unlikely not a single successful product at that time. So they said, can you help us kind of commercializing some of these ideas? So I joined. After 2 years, I put together a proposal for the executive team, and I said, we need to create a separate operation, because scaling a robotics product is very different than scaling a pure software product. And the problem really is not from ideation to prototyping, it's actually from prototyping to a finished product. Because unlike software and hardware, if you have a working prototype, you cannot do anything. You cannot ship it. And you still need to work on that. You need to test the hell out of it until it's a finished product, and you are quite confident that you can ship it to customers. So this is kind of a unique problem, and the model we created in terms of a startup support was exactly to solve this problem. I had to invent a new term for that. So it's not an incubation, it's not an acceleration, it's escalation. So anyways, we confused everyone when we were kind of pitching the idea. But this was the birth of an organization called Mass Robotics. And Mass Robotics grew from just an idea and a couple of slides back in 2014 to today. It's probably the largest hub for robotics company in the US and probably worldwide. 40,000 square feet of shared office and lab space in the Seaport in Boston. More than 40 corporate partners, companies like Amazon Robotics, FedEx, Honda, Mitsubishi Electric, iRobot, all those kind of cool companies. More than 70 plus companies that come on a temporary basis, use the space, and then they kind of spin out after they get into the product stage, and so forth. And then at that time, this is where I experienced it firsthand, the funding gap for early stage robotics companies, and I started Cybernetics Ventures. So this is our team. Mark Martin, my partner, Sasha, Ben, and Jackson from our team. Small team, but a mighty one. And we also built together a world-class advisory board of people, both from robotics. So Helen Greiner, co-founder of iRobot. Rick Fulk is the CEO of one of the most successful robotics companies now in logistics called Locus Robotics, doing great stuff, and probably they will IPO once the market opened. Peter Warman was the co-founder and CTO of Kiva. Kiva was a very successful logistics robot company, and it got acquired by Amazon back in 2012. And this is the company that became Amazon Robotics. So really one of the OGs in logistics robot. And then the rest of the folks are more kind of vertical experts that help us on the verticals that we pursue. How we define robotics, because even though that I know that I'm speaking to a very sophisticated, very well-educated crowd, but you will be amazed how many people we speak with that once we mention robotics, the image that pops in their mind is what?
Human body.
Is a humanoid.
Yeah.
And it pissed us off. So we had to come up with a very simple kind of definition. So we say robotics is really the intersection of automation or actuation and some sort of intelligence. The intersection is really robotics. That's why an iPhone is not really a robot, but an autonomous vehicle is a robot. We decided that we need the three areas. We need to invest in automation, we need to invest in robotics, and we need to invest in artificial intelligence. That's why the topic of this event today is very close to us. We've been following what's happening in LLMs and ChatGPT and all of that, because this circle, the artificial intelligence, is very relevant. And when people ask us, so you are in robotics, so what do you think of what's happening in AI? This is what we're doing. I mean, you cannot speak of robotics without speaking of AI. So we are very grounded when it comes to investment. We're very pragmatic investors, because both Mark and I, we are not, we're really outsiders to the investment community. We are operators, we are technologists. And when we kind of tracked what's happening in robotics over the last 20 plus years, we have seen lots of failures and few success stories. So we started to look at some patterns into those kind of companies. And it came really down to, are you starting from the cool technology that you're trying to kind of push to the market? Like, frankly speaking, many of what's happening now in LLMs and humanoids, or you are starting from the market need and you are kind of reverse planning from there. And what we have seen and what we have experienced is that the second kind of approach is probably the less friction, the most successful one. So we said we want to start focusing our thesis around the verticals. We want to start from the verticals that are actually ready to attract and pull robotics and are ready to adopt and embrace robotics technologies. And from our own experience, these are the areas that have been very strong pull for robotics: manufacturing, logistics, construction, healthcare. And in our second fund, we're adding agriculture and climate robotics, because really robotics is becoming the enabler for deploying climate-related solutions at a large scale. Not only that, in terms of full-scale and full-stack robotics platform, we also said it's very important also to keep an eye on enabling technologies. So all what's happening in obviously AI and machine learning, cloud robotics, so fleet management and kind of scenario planning, cybersecurity for robotics, an overlooked area that we have been looking for good companies in the space, and then autonomy in general, sensors and edge computing. So why robotics in the first place? Why this is now the time and it's a perfect moment to start investing in robotics and really have a strong focus. And it really comes down to these mega and macro trends that we all know that in certain verticals, in certain areas like construction, for example, and healthcare and agriculture, we don't have enough labor to do the work. So who's going to do all of that? And many communities around the world, they have aging population. So this is a very big driver for embracing and using robotics. Increased consumer demands for maximum convenience. The aging population, we covered that. Food and water insecurity. So in many areas, we have these kind of issues. And again, we don't have manual solutions to handle that. Housing shortage and climate change and pollution, as I mentioned. These are the markets. So not only these are macro trends that are pressing, but also they are tackling huge markets with very solid and very big CAGRs year over year. And not only that, but we have seen companies that are built and exited successfully in robotics. So when you look at the last 10 plus years, we have seen lots of successful exits in the space in areas like defense and healthcare and logistics, construction, and manufacturing. So, and for the first time probably in history, we started seeing robotics unicorns and companies that can exit above the $1 billion valuation. This was not typical. So there is definitely something interesting happening, and we're very excited about the space now. These are some of the companies that we invested in. I will spare you the details. You can go to our website and learn more about those companies. I mean, like our kids, we love all of them. All of them are exciting and doing amazing stuff. And Lamia, on the story you mentioned, actually we invested in a company called Crossco, and they were doing an AI platform that can look at cancer pathology and aid doctors to identify areas with high probability of cancer. And this was one of our early exits in the space. I have some videos, but I don't know if they will work. Oh. Okay. So this is a company actually here in California and San Francisco called Raise Robotics, and they are in the construction space. What you're looking at, it's a dual-arm robot that go to the edge of a building and install a facade bracket. This is a very dangerous job because the worker needs to lay it down on the floor and actually be hanging to install this facade. And then it's a very meticulous job because you want to make sure that the measurements and the location is 100% accurate. Any kind of difference, the whole facade will be kind of tilting, which is not a good thing. The other interesting thing that we found is for the first time, you will have a digital log of when, where these brackets were installed, which would turn out to be a very interesting thing for the warranty of the facade itself. So a very interesting kind of example of digitizing the physical world, which we think that there is a value also now for creating physical intelligence. This is a company in Boston called Verve Motion. It's a spin-out from this school called Harvard. And it's a light exosuit. So it's kind of a backpack, but it's an active kind of exosuit. It kind of gets connected to your thigh. And the idea is to help workers who are working in warehouses and lifting heavy weights. It increases their endurance and it protects their backs, and it collects a ton of data about their movement. And this company is generating revenue. They are deployed in multiple warehouses and retail stores. Rugged Robotics is a company in Houston, and they are also in the construction space. And this huge robot, it basically goes around and it prints on the floor the construction layout. This is a job that right now, it's done using ropes and chalk. So probably the same methods that my grandfathers who built the pyramids used. This is how the industry didn't change. So Rugged Robotics is a very interesting company too. Last one is a company out of Germany called Cambrian. Cambrian developed this stereo camera and a software. So it's in machine vision, but I mean, many of you know that this is a space very crowded. So what's unique about this company? Why did we invest? We invested because those folks, they developed a system that is not sensitive to light conditions, so it can actually see transparent items. And it can identify very small objects and even with dark colors. So they open up a whole field of automation that was not possible before. So these are some of the companies that we have been working with. But really our vision is we definitely want to generate huge returns for our LPs and ourselves. And I mean, we all want to make money, but it's as the saying goes, money is like oxygen. You cannot live for it, but you cannot live without it. But we also want to have an impact. We do believe that robotics has the potential to solve tons of problems. And I would even take this one step further, that it's probably one of the most critical technologies that we have to solve most of our problems. And we do believe that, unless we focus on the solutions that really matter, and not get distracted with all the noise, all the kind of cool gadgets, and all the kind of fancy stuff and kind of toys and all of that, we cannot really achieve that. And part of our mission is we want to create a movement where not only us kind of doing that, but we want other investors to join. We want growth investors to be looking at robotics and believing in robotics. And we want to kind of drive this whole movement. So since last year, we started an event. Calm down. Oh. There we go. So we started an event called Robotics Invest.
Founders, investors, executives, and corporate business leaders, Robotics Invest is a wonderful event that brings together the entire ecosystem.
So we started the event in Boston, and it's a highly curated event, 250 people.
We created Robotics Invest because robotics has emerged as a unique investment class with unique challenges, transformative needs, and phenomenal opportunities.
I don't know why I had this facial expression on the day. Probably I was tired.
To make great investments.
This is
But
hard.
our bigger vision is to help a leading role in delivering the next generation of robotics unicorns to the industry.
We're grateful to Cybernetics for hosting this event for industry, academia, and government to come together and forge the connections that build the ecosystem. This is truly what we want to create. It's a vibrant community.
This is the guy who started Boston
the next
Dynamics.
generation of robotics unicorn to solve some of the pressing problems that we all have.
Robotics Invest 24 has just been a tremendous event. It's just been a great day today. I'm excited and so thankful that Cybernetics puts this on every year for this community.
We're at the beginning of the next industrial revolution. At JP Morgan, we absolutely believe it.
While robotics used to be this niche, esoteric industry,
Actually, already planning what I will do next year, how I can get the most out of it.
So we designed the event not to be just kind of a cool event and people to come in. We designed it as a think tank, as a masterclass. And we give the platform and the stage to people who had successful exits, build companies that matter in the space. So last year we had the founders of Kiva. This year we had Boston Dynamics, and Dean came in, First Robotics, and all those folks. And the plan is to continue this as an annual event. Another initiative that
founders,
you want to watch the
investors,
video? Another initiative that we actually just released, was it last week or the week before? I lost track. Last week. So we have been working on the robotics playbook because again, we knew it's a different beast. So for the last year or so, Mark and I and the rest of the team have been working on putting all what we know about the space, how to build and scale successful robotics companies in this e-book. It's an online book. You can scan this QR code, and if you scan it today, you'll get free access to it. It's free, don't worry. So you go, and it's online, and we are releasing it chapter by chapter, so you don't have to kind of like dedicate an hour or so. Right now, it's the introduction and the first chapter, and then every few weeks we will release the rest of the chapters. But we think it's a great tool to have not only founders, but also investors and ecosystem leaders to build the next generation of robotics unicorns. So I'll stop here, and I'm looking forward for an engaged discussion.
Thank you, Stanley, for an incredible presentation. And let's welcome Lamia and Joe back to the stage and to have our fireside chat.
I brought her here.
Oh.
No, please. Jing, bring her on.
We need four.
Yeah, we need more. Good. It's incredible to have all of you, and we have like 3 technical experts in our panel today. So let's start by talking about the technical landscape and readiness. I'm curious from your perspective, how can you characterize the current development stage of AI? What areas we are getting the maturity of the commercial tipping point, and what areas we are still in the early experimentation phase? Let's start with Joe.
Where are we in the phase? I mean, I feel like all of this comes from research. A lot of it, this is kind of why I've like spent a lot of time working closely with researchers. It's like researchers and open source, because I think like a lot of like ideas or a lot of smart people like come together and they build things. But like a lot of this ends up like the impetus or the inception point for a lot of this is deep research. It's actually pretty opposite to your thesis around like starting with the use case and market need.
Yeah.
We just basically discover stuff, and
I would comment.
we discover it, and it's like today, for example, like LLMs, we call them like emergent capabilities, which is a little bit of BS because we also don't know really how to measure these models either, like measure how good they are or these capabilities. But it is it tends to be like very early like signs of like a new capability. And we don't really quite know how to like productize it or actually like build an application. It's like AlphaGo or like diplomacy. Like I was asked countless times, like, what's the use case for diplomacy? Like, I don't know. We got an agent to talk to a human, play a game that actually interacts with both language and the physical board, which is something, and do that state of the art and actually have that agent not be recognized as an agent. And it was so we couldn't really find great use cases other than like an NPC, right, a non-player character in a game or these things. But now we're starting to see, actually it bearing out. So I think we start with research and then.
Lamia, what do you think?
I think we're just scratching the surface of what we can do with AI, specifically at the application layer. And we're just very early in terms of bringing it to the real use cases, despite being almost 75 years of research. Yet this is the time where we find a lot of the investment going into AI, a lot of the focus into AI, but also a lot of the opportunities that's being created in order to be able to apply generative AI and predictive analytics and all of the traditional AI, which today we call traditional, into different use cases. So when I look at where we are in terms of the maturity level, we are still very early. And specifically when we talk about verticalized AI, or AI being addressing verticalized needs within specific sectors. And I would try to bridge the views between Joe and Fady, specifically in terms of, like AI in robotics or AI in different use cases. And this is where the real opportunity is, but also this is where the real impact is, specifically in terms of improving the human life, being able to create resources in a resource-constrained world, being able to bring the real value to improving our collective human experience. So scratching the surface, just getting there. Glad to see all of the resources going towards investments and studies and research and companies built around it. Can't wait to see what's our ecosystem is going to evolve over the next few years.
Yeah. I kind of agree. A few ideas. So commenting on Joe, I think we need to kind of agree that different groups have different roles to play in this whole kind of game of building successful companies and having an impact. So there is a role for researchers pushing the boundaries of what can be done and what is possible. There is a role for people who jump in and take kind of foundational technology and start to productize that. There is a role for actually people who take an early stage company and actually scale it to, a huge and a massive company. There is a role for the investors who actually direct capital and resources to select ideas and companies. So everyone has a role to play, and it's not fair to say, kind of researchers, they don't know anything, or kind of they just kind of play around or whatever. I think this is a paradigmatic and a well-balanced kind of perspective. On the question of where is AI, I think it's a little bit tricky because the next question would be which AI. I think we all, as a community, we need to start being more specific and precise when we kind of speak about AI, because it will mean different things for different people. So in my world, AI means totally different things than the folks who are in LLMs or kind of language or conversational AI. In my world, there is visual AI, there is navigational AI, there is manipulation, not the other manipulation. So there are different kinds of AI. So when you ask the question is, where is AI? I can tell you, in machine vision, this is what we solve, this is what we have not solved. In manipulation, we solve some things, but we have not reached yet to a human level dexterity, which is one of the key bottlenecks for humanoids. That's why humanoids, until today, cannot really do useful work, despite all the capital being invested there. It's very tricky, and people in robotics know that it will take at least 7+ years until we get something useful out of humanoids, because dexterity and manipulation is a bottleneck. It's not solved yet. When it comes to navigation, I can tell you that navigation AI is more or less a solved problem now. We have commercially deployed logistics robot at scale, at least indoors. And we know in autonomous vehicles, it's kind of semi-solved. Still a very tough problem. God bless Waymo, the only standing company now in the space. Everyone kind of run out of steam. It is. So this is, I think, it's very important that when we speak about AI, we make this distinction. I think, outside of tech, I think we also make this mistake when we speak about people. Like, oh, he's intelligent. You mean what kind of intelligence? Because maybe he or she is not academically super smart, but maybe socially they're very smart. Maybe spatially they're very smart. Maybe physically they're very smart. So I think it's kind of ingrained in us that AI means only one thing, and I think no, it actually means different things.
Sounds good. Yeah, totally makes sense. Now, let's delve into the investment strategy. Lamia, I'm curious. So in your opinion, what segments of AI stack are most overlooked by investors, but with high growth potential in your mind?
I'll start taking notes.
I'm in the venture space here. I think today, 2 years in after ChatGPT, the investment landscape is very different. Specifically, as 2 years ago, AI investment were very, like here and there, not looking at the different layers of the stack. But today, I see investment flowing to different layers, and the biggest question here is where we're going to capture the margins. And that's where some of the research that we have done around the value chain, specifically around where is value being generated, where is value being created, where is value is likely to be captured, is where we find that, like where there's a lot of investment and more investment opportunity. In my mind, one of the most critical ones and successful ones are specifically at the application layer, so at the very top of the stack. There is a lot of opportunities over there, and specifically if you look at it across two different 2x2s, enterprise versus consumer market, and horizontal versus vertical markets. And basically by looking at these different layers, by these 4 quadrants, you would see, like basically the different opportunities that's being created and the different opportunities that are likely to be protected from BigTech as well, because BigTech usually they go in and they invest or they own a certain area, and then startup doesn't have as much of an opportunity over there unless there is like a dynamics that's happening. So usually we look for areas where BigTech cannot disrupt or is too small for them to disrupt, and that the market is going to grow over time. And I would look at it from the lens of these 4 quadrants, specifically the vertical versus horizontal and consumer versus enterprise. Biggest one in my mind, the biggest opportunity I think is in the consumer market, and basically the next app that's going to be created, whether it's an app, whether it's a solution, that's actually going to create the next multi-billion-dollar industry and potentially multi-billion-dollar company that capture the value of it. Haven't found it yet, so if you have seen it, please let me know. But this is, like the main angle that I look for and the lens that I look for.
Sounds good. Fady, on the note of that, as an investor, professional investor, can you share how can you recognize the pattern from the noise?
I thought I would comment on that. This is an easier question. Okay, so this is a good one. So they say good judgment comes from experience. So how to recognize that comes from experience. But experience comes from bad judgment. So I think this is like, you need to expose yourself to lots of things. You need to look at lots of things. And that's why when I spoke about the genesis of Cybernetics Ventures is we have been into the space for, collectively between Mark and I, 50 years. So we have seen companies that failed. We have seen companies that succeeded. And we looked at the data. We looked at the founding teams. We looked at the use cases. We looked at the verticals. We looked at the product scope. And we looked at the business models. We looked at the funding rounds and the valuation and the kind of the growth pattern of those companies. And this is what gives us the kind of what are the most common patterns. Like one pattern is most successful companies, and I'm speaking about robotics, had at least one of the founders had a vertical expertise. So in the case of Kiva, Make Mounts, the CEO and the founder, he was not a roboticist. He was a logistics guy. He was a logistics consultant. In the case of Locust Robotics, which is again one of the most successful companies in the space now, the founder and later on the professional CEO, both of them are coming from logistics. They actually work together in a company called Flight Logistics. The only exception I have seen in robotics is a company called Autonomy, which is in the self-driving cars, which got acquired by Aptiv, and then the joint venture with Hyundai and became Motional. The founder of Autonomy, a guy named Carl, and he used to be a researcher at MIT. He's probably the only one I have seen that successfully made the kind of the They jump from a pure academic into a founder, into a professional CEO for a multi-billion-dollar company. So there are always exceptions. But this is one of the kind of patterns that we have seen. And we consistently have seen the pattern of starting from a problem. In robotics, mistakes are very expensive. Like if you start on a path that you are solving this problem for this market, and then 1 year into that you realize, oh, this is not really what we should be doing. We should be like doing this. This is a very expensive pivot because you are dealing with hardware, you are dealing with prototyping, you are dealing with lead times, you are dealing with supply chain. It's a whole different game. So being very clear about the vertical and the use case that you are going after is very important. And that's why the first chapter in the playbook is actually all about choosing the right verticals and the use case.
Great, thank you. Joe, turning to you. How do you think the founders should think about competitive advantage when faced aggressive moves from big tech like Meta?
Aggressive big tech. Okay. I mean,
He's a friendly guy.
I'm very friendly guy. So if you kind of like look at the kind of landscape of AI today in terms of like what's happening, obviously like there's a ton of open source work happening. Models are getting released, like tools are released. There's education. There's like I think in a lot of ways, when I look at like startups that I've talked to, and like the investments I've done because of the personal relationships mostly, but because I believe in the teams and I work with them, and I know what these people are capable of. When I look at startups that don't have, for example, like ML experience, like they just don't know machine learning, and they say, well, we're just, we're not ML people, like we're just gonna like use, an API, and we're just gonna try and figure out like an application. I typically like turn away and like stop talking to them because I think like there's a golden opportunity for like software engineers to be turned into machine learning engineers, and like the barriers have never been lower. And like yes, Meta and other companies make these big moves, but we're also giving away billions of dollars for free. Like if you look at all the things we're doing, like the models we're releasing, they're expensive. Whether it's the data, whether it's the training and the compute we're using, all the post-training, all the alignment, all the humans that are evaluating those models, all the red teaming, we're giving away billions of dollars as an industry in order to woo developers and help build, and give the tools and capabilities to help innovate in the next generation. And so, like, if you're a startup, I wouldn't see like the big tech as like something you fear. Like, I would say like, thank you. I would say thank you and take what they're giving you. Everything from courses like online. We, for example, like for Llama, we work with Azure really closely, and we build courses on prompt engineering. We just working on one for multimodal and vision, and using Gen AI with vision models. Like, take that and use it and learn, and like turn your SWEs, your software engineers, into ML engineers, and create a moat. Because I do believe like the startups who I like to use the term pie-shaped, which is like you're kind of deep in two areas. Like, and one of those areas has to be machine learning. And then the other area is a vertical. So, I remember like almost probably 10 years or maybe almost like I was pitched, I was at Intel Capital, or I was with Intel Capital, and we were doing like a startup day over there, and like there was a startup that pitched me on computer vision for medical imaging. And they're like, we've solved medical imaging for computer vision, like we solved it. Like we look at this benchmark, we beat the state of the art. And I started chatting with them afterwards, and I said, so, who has worked in the FDA? Like, who's a doctor here? Like, who's actually, worked in the medical field? None of them. They basically were a bunch of academics. They found a benchmark, they found a data set that was open. They trained a model. They ran some test set and said, no, look at this. We're like 2% better than what the published state of the art is. Look at us, we solved medical imaging. And I'm like, this is such bullshit. And I said, I'm sorry, but I can't invest in you. Then I saw teams that were like, again, like deep in both machine learning and in the vertical. They knew how to navigate, for example, the FDA. They knew how to get products approved. They were practitioners themselves. Like, those are the teams that I get excited about because, yeah, researchers are smart people and they're building this technology, but they have no idea how to apply it. they have no idea what it takes to go from a paper to product market fit to scale to all these things that I talked about. So those are the kind of things that kind of resonate with me.
If I may add to what George said, specifically on the productization of machine learning,
Yep.
that turns to be a very, very unique space that you have to build it at scale in order to be running into all of the different kind of problems in
Yeah.
order to be able to see it, and scale of 100 is very different than scale of 1,000, that's very scale of, and that's kind of the experience that also, and scale matters a lot.
Yep.
Scale does make a huge difference, and that's only comes from building and scaling large scale systems that usually comes from BigTech. So BigTech basically feeds into, from an experience point of view, the startup ecosystem, and the startup ecosystem feeds back to that BigTech. And that's kind of where the whole cycle starts and continues.
It kind of ties back to the point I was mentioning that every player has a role. So and again, it's not also a good idea to think of big companies as like, oh, those are the bad guys and they're going to destroy all companies and kind of acquire them. No. Every and again, I mean, I'm a complex systems guy, and I think of the whole ecosystem. Everyone has a role to play. Academia has a role to play. Founders has a role to play. Capital has a role to play. Large corporates has a very big role to play. Very big role. And in robotics, it's super important. They provide testing. They provide testing environment. They provide market insights, where the market is going. Sometimes they are strategic investors, and most importantly, in robotics, most of the exits have been through acquisition. So they are also the exit partners. So one cannot underestimate the role of large corporates in the whole kind of, I would say, innovation lifecycle.
Fantastic. Let's hear more advice. Lamia, what advice would you give to the investors who are new to generative AI, but want to find the next unicorn company?
If you find it, please call me.
And call me too.
Call all of us.
In all seriousness, so highly recommend start to learning about AI, start to learn about the basics, start to demystify why AI, non-deterministic nature, makes it so powerful. Because while it's not going to be critical for your investment portfolio or but it's going to demystify some of the challenges, and it's going to help you build a lot of rapport very quickly with startups that come across your door in order to be able to get a chance to invest in a highly competitive deal flow that everybody wants to invest. So that's number one. Number two, I would say immerse yourself in the ecosystem and what's happening in the hackathons, in the classrooms, even here lectures at Stanford, and you just walk into the engineering school and listen to the chit chat that's happening. And that's going also to give you a little bit of insights into what are the current challenges, what are the current problems that needs to be solved, what are the next problems that need to be solved once the current problems are being solved, what's the technology landscape and where is it going, who are the leaders in this space, and how to kind of gather all of that. And then the third one is attend the VC club, and that's it. This is the amazing conversation.
Thank you for your advice. Yeah, thank you so much. Joe, turning to you. As a product leader and angel investor, you have, for example, invested in Anthropic since 2021. And so what advice would you give to the tech founders who are trying to build a killing product?
Trying to build a killing product?
Yeah, and we invested in
I don't have any advice for those people.
No, not me.
I think. Sorry, bad joke. No, I think what I do a fair amount of advising. I think where my strength, I guess, is and where I try and guide is on things like what is the ecosystem around your product, what what your partner ecosystem could look like who what go-to-market strategy might resonate for your product, those kind of things. I'm personally incredibly relationship driven, so I like the startups that I'm advising one who actually I can't talk about. They're about to raise their Series A, fairly large round, and they, we've been working together, and I've connected them with all kinds of partners, and I think it's like I think my biggest advice is maybe like just look around you and understand like try to connect dots. Because a lot of like the researcher, like a lot of the AI founders these days in generative AI are like famous researchers that come out of DeepMind, who come out of Meta and Facebook AI research and OpenAI and those places, and they sort of like live in their own bubble, and they think research is they can build great research, they can build great products and build great companies, and they need to have someone who can help them build great products, not just great research. And I think that's like super important. But also like looking at where they can again like partner and where they can get leverage, where there's complementary technology to what they're building, so they can actually scale their go-to-market with these things. So those are the things that I tend to advise on.
Sounds good. Don't advise on how to kill. That's good. Fady, so Joe has covered the tech founders. How about non-tech founders? If a non-tech founder try to find a tech company, tech startup to join, how could he or she evaluate which one to join or to lead? What's your advice?
I don't know. I mean, find people that you trust, people that you believe in. When I partner with Mark, still in Jackson's story, I mean, Mark is a corporate guy. He spent 30 years at Alumni devices. So he's not your ideal VC investor. But Mark is a phenomenal human being. And he and I, we've known each other in the context of mass robotics, and we did do lots of things. One thing I kind of admire about Mark, and I haven't seen a lot, is he's a man of his word. Like he said, okay, I'll make this introduction, and sure enough, he does it. I'll speak to this guy and kind of back channel what we want to do. He does it. So for me, this was something unique because, as you can imagine, I came across lots of people that are a big mouth and they don't do whatever they say. And for me, this my brain does not kind of process that. I used to be a Boy Scout, and I respect my word. Like I say, I'll do this, I do it. So it's these kind of things. It comes down to values, I think, because if you are non-technical, what do you know? I mean, you know the soft things, the people, the selling, and all of that. So you need to partner with people that you can trust what they're saying. If you don't have this trust, you don't have much. So I would say this is at the end of the day the most important thing, because even if we trust each other and we came across challenges, or we realized that what we are thinking about the world or about the business is not right, we can speak about it. We can adapt. And we had many of these moments when we are fundraising, or when we are kind of shaping an investment, or sitting on a board of one of the companies. So I think this is the most important.
Fantastic. Before we open the floor for Q&A, a final question close to many of our hearts at Stanford. What matters most to you?
In general, or in the context of AI?
Whatever you prefer.
Okay.
Lamia.
So I wrote my essay for, and I think it passed. Okay. But for me, it's putting AI to good use cases that's going to improve humanity and improve our human experience. And that's super important for me, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's going to be another technology. Yes, we have dedicated our life to be able to improve it. We have dedicated our life to be able to see its impact. But unless it is actually improving and moving the needle in one direction or another in order to be able to be useful for our human existence on Earth, then it's actually of no use. And there is a huge number of technologies that happened over the human history, which actually went away, and at the time everybody was excited about it. But at the end of the day, it's all about making it useful for our day in and out, and useful for our lives. And that comes down to safety, security, application, subject matter expertise. applying it to real verticals and making sure that it's being used in the right use cases and putting it in the hands of good people who can get it into good use cases among a huge list of other factors in order to make sure that it's actually useful and that actually it's being applied the right way, that the many players in the ecosystem, from researchers to investors to productizing the technology to machine learning operations to so on and so on, or actually have spent their life wisely in order to advance our human experience.
Yeah.
Joe. I think we have the wrong
Okay. That's my word. Okay.
I'm just the investor.
Out of order operation. I like that. What matters to me the most? Personal connections. I think it matters the most by far. I think this is, if you look at any of the angel investment or any of the companies I advise, I never angel invest, honestly, for the money, for the profit, for for any of that. It's because of people. Like I remember when, like last year, Jeremy Howard reached out. I've known him for ages because we built developer ecosystems together. He's kind of fairly famous in the space. He reached out. He's like, "Joe, I'm building something. Would you invest?" And I literally had a check written before he even finished the sentence, right? Of course I'm going to invest because I think you're amazing. I think you and your wife have been. His wife, by the way, was a scientist as well and fairly famous in the field. So for me, personal connections matter the most. It's how I got started in AI. Some of the friends I've built over the years still, for example, it's what matters. And I think that's kind of manifested in my career in weird ways, where I really like to build kind of unusual partnerships because I've had these relationships. Like for example, I've built partnerships between Meta and OpenAI. I built partnerships with, which is kind of unlikely, Meta and Apple. Even more unlikely, right? Meta and Google, you know what I mean? And I think it's been fun to kind of build these things that actually have amazing things happen out of those partnerships, and a lot of that was based on relationships I've built and cultivated. So
amazing. I love both your key things. I would say what really matters for me is listening to the voice inside. And I think many times we spend a lot of time and energy kind of listening to what's going on and this and that. And I think there's a very soft voice inside each one of us kind of whispering to us like, don't go there. And sometimes it says this is a great idea. Stop. It's gone. So I think being true to this voice is very important, and people have different names for this voice. But I think in Maslow's kind of hierarchy of needs, the top of the hierarchy is does anyone know?
Self-realization.
Yes. It's actually, you just kind of realize yourself. I mean, it's not rocket science. You just realize yourself. So this is who you are. So I think this is the most important thing, because unless we do that, we will never be happy, and we will never be impactful. And yeah, I think it's very important.
Thank you. Nice.
I don't want to get emotional, so
It's okay, it's a Stanford GSB. With a touch feeling.
Yes, exactly. And now is the perfect timing to hear the voice from the audience.
yeah, great connection.
First of all, I really appreciate coming over. I'm a current student here in GSB, so I just come down from the library and join this session. Really appreciate that. Well, question for all of you about funding this startup in infrastructure. It's big players again, people billions of dollars training the model, building the tool set, provide it for free, open source, everything.
Yep.
Is it a bad idea to set up a startup in the area of infrastructure versus doing something in the domain, application, industry side?
It's definitely where I wouldn't put my money. I mean, I'll be really honest. I think it's a really tough space.
This is pretty killing.
It's a killing product for sure. It's hard because I think you're basically margin stacking GPUs in cloud computing or cloud platforms. And I think once you hit scale, I think like I have a lot of friends who are founders in this space, and they're struggling. They are like driving up some ARR, but also it's at the end of the day, it's like not high margin ARR. It's not. It's I was actually having coffee with one the other day, and what he told me is like we do all this amazing optimization, like cutting edge stuff, like stuff that you can put papers on and like whatever. I mean, it's just bleeding edge stuff. And then someone just goes and lowers the price like 50 cents or 75 cents per million tokens, and it's like, what So it's like I would invest there. I think the application layer absolutely is the place, but again, it depends on the team. If the team is again like kind of deep in ML and in the vertical, I think it's a great combination. That's where I would probably put my money.
Hi, hello. My name is Flame. So I'm venture capital founder in the biotech and AI space. So I was a former Stanford student and just founder of Recombinant Capital. So I got a question about AI investment. If you get a request from a investment banking firm, as you may heard, XAI is doing fundraising recently. So if you got the request to invest in XAI, would you do that? Considering that OpenAI or Anthropic is already a little bit advanced, in front, would you do that decision? And please give me some suggestions here. Thank you.
Buddy?
It's not where I invest, so it's irrelevant.
I would avoid XAI for the reason that it's highly valued. The valuation is huge, and it's not just my comfort zone at this point in time to be able to.
Thank you.
That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Listen to the voice.
Yeah, thank you so much for the talk, very interesting. So I'm Ethan, I am now from the W department, I've got master's and PhD from there. So my question is, can somebody cover the national security angle of this technology? Because I see you guys talking about a lot of very nice applications, but seems to be we are headed towards a Cold War number 2, and AI seems to be a core technology in that. And whether Silicon Valley is more open to invest in mid-type technology now than, say, 10 years ago, given things such as what happened with Google and whether there are opportunities in that space. Thank you.
Question.
I can take this.
Yeah, I think we can take.
So I have been engaged with different groups, kind of connected with the kind of DC and kind of policymakers, and obviously we all have seen kind of an interesting convergence between the kind of innovation investment community and the defense community. And the reason that this is happening that we realized that we have a lot of dependency on other countries, that in case there is a conflict, we wouldn't have self-sufficiency in terms of manufacturing, in terms of supply chain, in terms of semiconductors. So then the whole narrative around like advanced manufacturing and onshoring manufacturing back to the US is not an economic question only, it's a national security question. That's why the DoD have been kind of active and investing into the space and have done lots of activities. I guess you're also interested to think about AI from a national security, and there's lots of groups discussing what are the key technologies that are worth looking at and making sure that the US kind of stay kind of ahead of other countries. Obviously, AI is one of them. Quantum computing is another one. There is a group of technologies that are being discussed, but one cannot underestimate the power of AI, and add to that agents, and then agents speaking to agents, and before you realize, things can easily get out of control. So I was joking with Jackson on our way that wouldn't it be nice that we just open an office in Hawaii, and then AI will run the VC fund, like will do everything. But this is kind of a fantasy now, but no one knows. So definitely it has a very big role, and there are lots of groups in the government looking at that very seriously.
I'll just add maybe a few things. I think, because we actually just recently announced our collaboration with the U.S. government on Llama. And I think that's been really important because I think we want to make sure that the U.S. has the technology, right? There's not artificial barriers to being able to use the technology for applications in the government, I think it's funny. I think I was at a conference last year when AI security. I spent the last day with a bunch of folks globally in policy at this convening around AI safety, and I think it's actually I think there's lots of be said in terms of open models and open generative AI being safer and being a competitive advantage for us. And I think we can influence certainly the world with our technology like we have in the past with open source software. But when I was chatting with one of the journalists in the US, while there was a lot of churn at kind of the legislation level, they're embracing open source, right? They're using it, they're because it allows them to build obviously applications and technology locally, not sharing data, they can have full control, they can deploy the weights in all kinds of different environments, and it can be a competitive advantage I think, for the US and national security.
Hi, my name's Tony. I'm a Stanford alum with MSAI. I have a quick question. What lessons do you think we can learn from the 2015 era deep learning, computer vision sort of boom that apply to generative AI, and what do you think the delta is?
I can jump in. I mean, I think one of the things, we have an AI safety team and responsible AI team. I think we've, so in that era, we use deep learning for things like image classifiers and content moderation and what we more generally call integrity. And I think one of the reasons we invested a lot in open source is because we saw these this area of high entropy and high innovation, and we wanted a bridge to it, right? We wanted to be able to build a bridge and be able to cultivate and curate that technology and then pull it in and build better products. And so if you remember the days of the CNNs, every week practically, right, there was this whole era in that time frame you're talking about where there was there was a whole residual net, ResNets and all the different CNNs, and every week a new one would come out and it would push to the state of the art just a little bit. And that was a lot of that ended up being built on PyTorch and built on our tools, which is great. We can actually pull that right into our products and actually find, for example, the hateful memes or Unity or whatever, CSAM or these types of harms on our platform, be able to detect them at higher accuracies. So what I think we've learned is safety and this technology is I think we can accelerate it quite a bit, but we also learned a lot in that era and we've actually applied. So all those folks that have been traditional integrity people, they now build safety systems and tools and red team and keep our models safe and build these systems. So we've applied all of those learnings, and now we're doing generative AI. So,
in my mind, it's also the importance of productization, the importance of removing as much of the friction in order to be able to build end-to-end systems to make sure that actually we give the opportunity to be able to invest our time in the productive, interesting problems to solve at the application layer or another layer, but by doing, building the platform once, and then building the innovation on the layers above it usually is where most of the value being captured and created. Having said that, there's a lot of value that's being created at the platform layer, at the tools layer, at the machine learning operations layer. Just a question of how do you create it in a way such that it's sustainable and such that it's able to scale and build on the next level and enable the next generation of applications and application layer. That's one message.
I noticed we had a couple more questions, but I want to honor everyone's time, so probably last question. Okay.
Hi there. My name is Ramon, Alumni. What are some of the areas where data is really the thing that would hold back AI from delivering value to any particular vertical that might be exciting to you? Like one example is like, yes, there are certainly smart buildings, lots of sensors collecting lots of different types of data, and AI can use that to deliver value. However, you look at the majority of buildings, I'll make it up, 95% of buildings are completely dumb. So there's very little ability for AI to deliver value. So what are some of the areas that you identify that, well, maybe it's not the AI technology that's going to hold us back, it's the data on which action can be taken and that can be converted into value?
I can take that. Great point, and we have been very interested in what Gen AI or how Gen AI would impact robotics. And within our team, we came to the conclusion that Gen AI was possible because we had all the digitized data for kind of from the internet, from documents, from all this kind of data. We had it digitized, so we can kind of create Gen AI on this data. But when you transition, as you mentioned, to the physical world, buildings, warehouses, hospitals, agriculture, kind of fields, and all of that, do we have the data? No, we don't have it. And it's one of the key bottlenecks for deploying really general purpose robotics platform in the physical world because we don't have the data. So one of the interesting areas for investment for us is actually in tools that will collect the data that eventually we can run these kind of algorithms on. So it is true that, and again, back to the idea of like, we need always to define what AI we're talking about. Is it the enterprise? Is it the consumer? Is it the I don't know what do we call this like versus the physical world? Like, is it the digital world? I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever. So yeah. So I think it's data definitely is a big issue, especially for robotics.
Selfishly, I'll ask some very non-technical questions. It's just a news that there's AI got too smart and have the POS project potentially eliminated. I'm not sure if you guys heard that news.
It did what?
Because the AI training model become too smart to solve some math problem, and they have to do more investigation in that model. Assuming they got too smart, they will stop that project because it started to be dangerous to human beings. I'm not sure it's a fake news or what. So just want to get
generated by AI.
Exactly. So just quickly to the audience, that do you think there is a threat to the point that the startups need to worry about, someone needs to shut down their project?
And
Are we there?
Who are they?
I think it's Google or someone.
Okay.
XAI? Yeah, someone there. I just got it. Probably Google invest, right? So you guys don't worry about that at all. All right, that's good to know. I'll get back to you.
Okay. Okay, perfect. As our evening comes to a close, I want to say thank you for every one of you for joining us tonight. It's been an incredible time with Lamia, Fady, and Joe. And thank you for being such an amazing audience. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you and see you next time.